Good morning. Welcome to our special meeting of Municipal Council for Tuesday, May the 14th at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time and ask if there's any declarations of interest. Seeing none, I will move to deputations. At this point, I see our agenda does not have any deputations. Mr. Clerk, should there be any?
That is correct, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're here today to do a workshop on a couple of topics, and we will get into our workshop agenda at this point with our Civic Precinct Plan presentation. Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We continue to move ahead with our agenda for council, and our workshops are useful for discussion and sharing information, educating not only our elected officials, but also our staff team, and most importantly, our public. So I do know one of the things today, a lot of our presentations are on slides, and we are looking at council recently approved an update of our viewing for the public that are viewing online, and one of the things will be in the future the slides will be visible online as well, and so it'll be a little better for the public to follow along. All of the materials today will be posted online for folks to check into. So we have three-part workshop today. First is the Civic Precinct Plan, which we brought to the last term of council with our new general manager and assisted by our general manager from Community Parks, Recreation and Culture. The two are going to walk through some of the higher level concepts of things that could potentially happen on our incredible civic precinct lands, and hopefully have some discussion and maybe some move forward thoughts from council. Part two is a brief overview of our strategic plan, and as we start moving along, some very innovative and unique ideas on how to utilize it and market it to our public. So that's the second part, and it should be fairly brief. And then thirdly, we have our Sharon Temple, our neighbors to the south of us. We're going to do a little presentation, and I believe there's going to be a tour and light lunch to follow. So that's the topics for this morning. And on that note, if I may, I will pass it over to General Managers Ramuno and General Managers Karmazin, who are going to walk through the Civic Precinct Plan update.
Good to have both of you working with us today. I look at today as being one of those times where we're bringing the future to the present, and all three topics are including that. So
great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. So Aaron and I will just go through the slide presentation. We have a number of slides. And we really just want to provide council with an overview of the work that's been done to date with respect to the Civic Precinct Plan. And so we do have a slide deck. The last time this came before council was back in July of 2018 with respect to the preferred concept plan, and the direction there was to report back with a final plan and a phasing and a budget. I did provide council with an update last month with respect to us bringing this forward back to our workshop, because I think it was obviously it's a prudent to come back to provide an overview for the rest of council and some new members. So with respect to just a general overview, the intent of the study was really to have the 3-block area, which is defined as our civic precinct area. Blocks 1, 2, and 3. Obviously, the northern block encompasses the town hall, the civic center block, and the northern boundary is the Judah Road extension that's being constructed currently. Block 2 in the center is the Sharon Temple block, and the block 3 is the southern block, which is our parkland block. The 3 blocks comprise an area of about 24 acres. And again, the whole purpose was really to establish a vision and really to try and create the this precinct as an area that would serve as the community focal point and really a central gathering place for our residents. Again, this really just identifies the objectives of establishing the vision, principles, and preparation of design guidelines, et cetera. Again, just stepping back a second, we did retain a consultant firm, MHBC, back in September of 2017 to initiate the study work. And there was a study process and a work plan that was established, and this slide deck really just identifies the 4 phases of the work in the consultation process, again, starting in September. There was significant public consultation and outreach throughout the process, as listed here, a number of public meetings, open houses. Staff met with the various stakeholder groups, Chamber of Commerce, Heritage Advisory Committee, the Sharon Temple folks as well, a number of visioning and workshop days. Really, the whole intent there was to seek input from the public with respect to their thoughts on how the area should develop. So again, back in July, the number of draft concepts were presented to council, and a preferred option was selected at that time, and it really focused around creating enhancing the streetscape and creating a main street along Leslie Street, as well as identifying sort of the gathering space in the market square just to the north of the of Town Hall here, which included a performance space, a civic plaza out in front of the civic building, and it also identified future expansion plans to the Town Hall building, additional parking, identified underground parking as a potential as well, and a circulation parking plan, as well as pedestrian connections throughout the precinct plan to connect the various blocks and the parkland to the south. At this point, I'll turn it over to Aaron just to go through the next set of slides.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council, the public, for the opportunity to present the high-level concept plans, facility fit, and some potential design features for the precinct. As Marco indicated, site circulation and integration of the precinct is integral, with multi-use pathways and trails, connection into our parkland to the south, and the trail system in the Sharon Village to the south, which connects to our broader trail system, and as well connectivity within each of the quadrants of the precinct. As well as site circulation and parking, looking at the potential for initial phases of the plan and then future phases and potential growth and development and requirements for parking on site. Initially, there was a proposed phasing plan with the high-level contemplated facility fit. There was a number of items on the facility fit schedule. What staff did was we met internally and we took a look at breadth and depth of project and how these projects may phase out. And we also took a look at a balanced approach to service level town-wide, as well as our Parks and Rec master plan. And so what we came up with is more of a scoped or a phased a plan to look at developing the lands over time, but with an initial phase and a facility fit that would include, or that could include, stuff like event space, public gathering space with perhaps a band shell or a demarcated place where our mobile stage could be supported. The potential to repurpose the silo to provide some site signage or branding identity that I'll speak to a little bit later in the presentation. I have with me here today Frank Mazzata, our Manager of Parks Development and Operations, who will also assist with some of the facility fit descriptions and defining some of those facility fits a little further into the presentation. Park lighting to improve pedestrian access and to improve the space for evening hours. Entry feature that could be installed both off the Leslie Street frontage and the Judah Doan Way frontage, inviting patrons to the site. Hardscaping that could be used for pedestrian connectivity as well as event space that would be mixed with softscaping as well. Often it blend both parks uses as well as public gathering space uses. The potential for covered skating, which is very high as far as a request from our residents with our parks facility fits through our Parks and Rec master plan. That covered skating provides a better ice surface, longevity for your ice surface, and as well, the covered pavilion can also be used in the spring and summer months for event space, programs, permits, farmers market. We have a Tapestry of Taste, a new event that is in its inaugural year this year, and as well as programs and permits. An example of some programming would be with two seniors residents proposed to the north. Covered seniors programming. Pickleball is a very popular sport among seniors. Covered pickleball could be presented in this space, and just a general active programming space that also works extremely well with the established as well as growing mixed-use areas surrounding the precinct, including Vince's Market and the mixed-use commercial that we're seeing surrounding the area as well. Improved pedestrian access at the front of the Civic Center facility, connecting the event space, primary event space through to the Sharon Temple grounds is critical. We also have a multi-use trail that extends from the Civic Center lands parking lot to the west, past the Sharon Temple grounds through to Temple Park to the south as well. Potential bandshell space or event staging space for performances. This is an actual permanent installation. Some of the types of spaces we could contemplate is, again, a demarcated space that would be provided for performances that could integrate and work with our mobile stage, which is a significant asset that we have to perform or to support performances. And it would as well make good use of that asset as well, and program the space for entertainment purposes, concerts in the park, those types of events. The silo, potential repurposing or branding of the space. Previously, Parks and Rec, along with CIES and Communications, made a presentation about community entry signs. And communities can spend anywhere between $10,000, to $150,000 on signage. An example of some groups that have done a great job of using existing structures to brand their facilities is just north of us, the Red Barn Theater, and as well with the Briars Resort, where they've reconditioned their silo to act as a community landmark and presenting a form of identity for the site. Property that's done a great job with branding event space is an example to the south of us with Riverwalk Commons. So this site would present a great opportunity to be branded as an example as the farmstead, or as the market site, or as the Civic Market site, or the Civic Square site. All potential opportunities to brand the site and build up a bit of an identity and recognition that it's a gathering space and a space to host events. I'll now turn the presentation over to Frank, and Frank will talk a little bit about pedestrian lighting and improving the lighting standard with the precinct.
Thank you. One of the important elements that we're looking at right now is lighting. So within the precinct plan, we've already started looking at heritage-type lighting. We've started implementing a very specific type of lighting and style within Temple Park. We've also indicated through the site plan approval of the Vince's Plaza and integrating a very heritage-looking type of feel for the area. I think this is going to be a very important aspect of the area. And we want to include that even after daylight hours, that the area is very well used, and that even potential evening events are able to be held and organized. One of the other areas of importance in terms of placemaking is going to be entry features. This is an example of a very large entry feature. We've already started looking at, again, with Temple Park, we're very far along within the detail design. And on the right side, there's an example of the detail of what the entry of Temple Park is going to look like from the Leslie Street side. So that's right adjacent to the Ramsey House. Those types of designs and placemaking identities will make people really understand where they are and the importance of where they are. So looking at those types of entry features without the precinct plan in context will be very important. Some of the other features that will tie in the area are some of the pavers through our streetscape and public realm guidelines. We've identified very specific type of pavers and uses of the pavers throughout the heritage district, and specifically within the precinct plan, we would be implementing a lot of this. Again, within Temple Park, we've identified a very heritage flagstone look throughout the park in various areas, and we'd like to see that carried throughout the precinct area. This is just a very simple example of a brick paver. This is not specific to what was chosen, but just an example of how it meshes in and creates the space and links it all together. And the next slides I'm going to hand over to Aaron.
An example of skating at the Civic Square, Market Square, the Farmstead. A couple examples there of some open air skating as well as some covered structures. Again, the covered structures, an example down in Peel Region, down in Brampton. Those covered structures are used seasonally, again in the spring and summer months as events pavilions and program and permit space, and used quite effectively to support any number of events and programs moving forward. Also pedestrian connectivity, making the best out of pedestrian connectivity. We're seeing a trend with linear type parks and interactive spaces. So not just building sort of pedestrian causeways, but actually bringing them to life and actually including seating areas for outdoor games, and different places for visual interest. That very much could be integrated between again, the Judah Doan House through to the front of the Civic Center precinct, front of house in front of the Civic Center to the east, and connecting the entire front of the site, frontage on Leslie Street, with an interactive space that could host public art as well, and be interactive and not just hardscaping to move people through. And then some enhanced pedestrian crossings and access. There is some thought about potentially adding bollards to the entranceway into the Civic Center site, some removable bollards that could be put in place to host events at the front of the Civic Center as well. And just demarcating as well crossings at the four corners, including between this property, the property that we're now occupying, which is now the annex to the east, and all four corners providing a good pedestrian access way and travel from both sides of Leslie Street and north and south as well. Happy to report that Frank and I met with the Temple Board yesterday evening and presented the detailed design and some of the design features for Temple Park to the south. and we'll be reporting back to council prior to commencing with the construction of that project. We've had a successful working group, a subcommittee of the Temple, that has worked with town staff to inform the design and really add a tremendous amount of value in integrating both the Temple site, the Temple Park, as well as connectivity up to the Civic Center lands as well, the Civic Center site. An example of large shade structures, again, that could be integrated in with skating, and then as well utilized for spring and summer events. Some of the structures that we're seeing now host events with outdoor fireplaces, outdoor cooking, barbecue areas, those types of amenities. I'll now turn it to Marco, who will provide some details about the surrounding area development.
Certainly. So the last couple of slides really just identify some of the existing development plans that have been approved by council or under consideration, and how the existing streetscape will be enhanced along Leslie Street and Mount Albert in the future. And one of the objectives of the precinct plan is also to enhance the streetscape, create that Main Street feel, a sense of, promote a sense of place, and, improve and enhance those pedestrian connections across the street. So, once Vince's is done, there'll be some additional landscaping and some pedestrian connections from the commercial plaza out to Leslie Street. And as you can see with the seniors proposal on the north side of Mount Albert, the streetscape will be enhanced there as well, and that's the intent for the Civic Precinct in general, enhancing the pedestrian connections in that streetscape along Leslie Street. The next slide is, this was the preliminary costing that was identified by the consultant for the entire scope of work, and they were, again, really preliminary cost estimates for the 4 or 5 phases that were proposed. Significant costs, a lot of them relate to the underground parking structure that was proposed, and so we get to that range of 39 to 48 million. Again, I just stress these are preliminary costs. This next slide is a phasing plan that staff are proposing. We've scaled back, and we think we've identified some initiatives that can be accomplished over the short term. Obviously, there's a cost to these as well, focused in on, and some of those slides that Aaron went through, illustrate some of the work that would be done, creating that market area, the improvements to the roads and streets, the pattern streets and pedestrian crossings, the walkways and the paths throughout the precinct, and then some of the entrance features, signage, etc. And again, just stress these are preliminary costs that we've identified based on some of the original costing prepared by the consultant. And I think the next steps, obviously we're open to questions, but the next steps would be, subject to council's direction, is to come back with a more detailed phasing and costing plan, and perhaps a detailed landscape budget or a landscape plan that would identify some of the or illustrate some of the work that we are proposing as part of the phase 1. So if there are any questions, we'll do our best.
Thank you very much to you and your team. It brought it all together for myself, and I'm sure for other members of council as well. Questions from members of council? Councillor Morton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Reading through this and going back through the one that we had in January, on page 7 of 46, you're referencing the tour of the precinct plan area and the meeting with staff and presentation at council and going out and doing a walkabout and everything. And that's, I get that. I mean, some of us weren't here the last time when all this was taking place, but before we go ahead and approve this whole plan, which I know is probably not going to happen for a little while, but we haven't seen any of it. I mean, I know it's going to be adjacent, some of the stuff is going to be adjacent to the Ramsey house, and I know where that is, but as far as a lot of the other stuff, we do not know. And I think that before I am comfortable with saying, yes, I really like this idea, and that I think that we should get an opportunity to also do some of those walkabouts and hear some of the things that the people were talking about that they would like to see as well.
So you're suggesting getting our running shoes on and a
Or our
camera and
work boots,
pictures,
depending on how
workbooks?
wet it is out there, rubber boots.
Yeah. Any comments? I'm not sure that was a question. I think it was a comment.
What's the question? Do we get to do some of these things that were done back in 17 and 18?
Through you, Madam Mayor, as this slide identifies, there was certainly significant public consultation, held in the past, and so we've arrived at a place where we have sort of a draft concept. Today's discussion, slide presentation is really there for discussion purposes. We're certainly open to, coming back with some more information, whether that's a requirement to go hold some more public consultation. That's up to council. But I think what we've done with this first phase is really trying to identify some of the work that can be accomplished, as part of the first phase. But we will certainly have to report back with sort of more detailed costing and perhaps some more illustrations with respect to how it may ultimately look.
Thank you. Councillor Crone and then Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to staff. Congratulations on conducting such an impressive review with the and planning with the. I know you've had input from the community and staff, and it's amazing. I think the mayor said it well. We're looking at a bit of our future here today. And I commend you for thinking big. We are a little town, but we won't be forever. So I think it's always good to get ahead of the curve. I love everything I see. There is one thing that concerns me, though, and that's the price tag. And I know big, bold ideas don't come cheap, and it's an investment. I've seen other municipalities invest big dollars into their community centers and parks and so on. You mentioned that there might be funding from alternate sources. Would you even, maybe it's way too early to ask this question, would you hazard a guess of how much of this budget we could snag from other sources other than the good taxpayers of East Gwillimbury?
Mr. Valchek?
Madam Mayor, through you, we certainly have some funds that we've targeted in our community capital contribution fund that would be appropriate for this purpose. I also recall in recent meetings the mayor had mentioned, do we have shovel-ready projects in case there's certain infrastructure funding opportunities and those sorts of things. So we're always looking for, as you say, other sources of funding, and then we would also look at anything that we could attribute as sort of growth-related that might line up with our development charges as well. So there's a whole host of sources we would look at, and then depending on how this proceeds, there may also be other forms of contribution that might come in from individuals or groups that we might be able to look to along the way. So there's a whole host of opportunities that we would try and pursue as part of a funding strategy for something like this.
Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is, I think, another another step in the process that we've been undertaking. I know that there was significant, because I was here, there was significant community outreach. There were subcommittees formed from different stakeholder groups that also participated in this. And so I think if you do too much consultation, you get a lot of ideas, and I think in this case, the presentation that was given to us and during the last term was very, well, it was expensive to begin with. It was far more than the 4.6 million, and it was aggressive, I guess is the best way of putting it, and very future thinking. This, I think, is something that we could all conceive of right now, and the residents that are here now would enjoy and appreciate and get great use from, rather than the sort of long-term development of underground parking structures and commercial buildings and those sorts of things. So that would be my kind of comments as far as that's concerned. Through you to staff, Madam Mayor, what would be our proposed timing for phase one? So we've got a plan that looks somewhat manageable as far as scale and scope, that we could conceivably, if it was here yesterday, we would be appreciating and using. So what are we looking at time-wise?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the sequencing would be to, as a next step, to present to council a capital budget project, a separate project, to take this from an initial or a preliminary design and then move it towards a concept design. And that's working with a landscape architecture firm, and that would involve presenting back to council with some of the facility fits that are being contemplated in the adjacencies and location of those facilities, and then as well further public consultation. So that would be as a first next step for 2020. So to put forward capital budget request to move the project forward in a strategic way that would involve public consultation as well.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the price tag that you've given is a very, I understand that it's a very high level. Would that include the detailed design or that capital budget that you would need to go from preliminary to concept and maybe even detailed design?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. That would include the budget. Typically, okay. Design fees are approximately 10% of the total project budget. So that would give council an approximate plus or minus figure of what that potential capital request may look like.
If I may, Madam Mayor, I wonder if you might, staff, if you might go to the concept plan, I'm not sure which page it's on, I think it's 11 of 25, that shows sort of the overall look and feel of it. And I wonder if you might be able to walk us through some of those key features, just as far as, I don't know if we can zoom in or not, but just as far as where they're all located. So for example, those circles to the left that are adjacent to, I think that would be Beachboro, number 2 just says landscape lighting. So there's 2 circles there. I'm wondering what those are. No, I wouldn't say it's this screen. I don't know if that's the future phasing. It's the one that has the band, the sort of the pictures along both sides, that one. That screen there. I think that's what we're looking at, right? That's the $4.65 million plan. I wonder if you might be able to walk us through some of the key features. So you talked about what we were doing, but where are they going on site? So where's the silo? Where's the band shell? Because for me, some of it's a little blurry, so I want to make sure that I've got the right idea. And also, while you're doing that, if you wouldn't mind, for me, I'd like to know what those yellow things are. Maybe those are tables and chairs, I'm not sure. But for me, I worry about taking this entire space and paving it with interlocking, which is what it seems to be doing. And I wonder if you might comment on that too, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll walk through the proposed facility fit for, again, draft for discussion, very high level concept from Leslie Street. From Leslie Street, we can see the gate entry features that were referenced, inviting people into the site. large-scale pavilion that may support covered skating as well as your events, programs, and permits seasonally. Perhaps a section where you could stage the mobile stage, demarcated for the performance events. The silo, again, further gate entry off of the frontage off Judadone. And to the south, that interactive linear type park, which would connect the event space through to the front of the Civic Center space, through to the Sharon Temple lands, and then through to Temple Park to the south. Pedestrian connectivity, obviously, on Leslie Street, as well as multi-use trail, which we are installing this summer along Beachboro. Further potential connectivity, which we have some of at this point, working with the region and their streetscape partnership, with the impressioned asphalt across to the four corners. We also have a capital project to complete these corners, as well as the corner off of Judadone Road, to have a similar look and feel to the masonry walls and hardscaping that has currently been installed out there, and as well potentially bollarding off this entranceway so you could have this entire area opened up as event space and interactive space. Hope that answers the question. If there's...
Yeah, I'm just wondering what's happening on the far west. It looks like if you're a Star Wars fan, it looks like BB-8 at the top there, but it's looks like a number 8. Is that a garden? Is that a meditation space? Is that where the cenotaph goes?
I believe it was held as open space, as parks and open space. That's currently where our septic bed sits now, and the bed is being decommissioned. We're now on the wastewater pipe that connects to Judadone Road, and we will be decommissioning that bed. That may occur in future phases. Again, it would warrant through the concept design process to look at how the space is being used, what public consultation has to say. I can say that that space, with the recent development that has occurred to the east with the Sharon Village, Sharon West development, is quite actively used by dog walkers, people walking through from the Sharon Village community through to Vince's Market and the retail and commercial off of Leslie Street. And as well, we're seeing a lot of use of the outdoor picnic tables being used. We're seeing stretching classes, Tai Chi classes now occurring in the open space just north of the Civic Center. So our proposal would be to integrate hard surfacing and hardscaping with naturalized spaces as well, with plantings, natural heritage, and utilizing softscaping as well as hardscaping. We're not looking to pave paradise. I think we would want to blend the two.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That sort of answered my question. I think during some of that consultation, there was some discussion of making that sort of a passive recreation space, even creating a walkway in the shape of a figure 8 for the infinity shape, so that you could have a meditation garden or spots with public art or things like that people could contemplate, but that it would be passive space. And so I think that reflects some of that feedback as well. So thank you. And then if you wouldn't mind, just the scale of the pavers and sort of the pink areas and what the yellow bits are.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe the yellow area is landscaping. We have indicated areas where there would be different landscaping pockets and trees and ornamental grasses, those types of treatments.
Thank you. Then that also answers my question about the scale and scope of the amount of paving. You're integrating landscape features as well into it, so it's not quite so paved over paradise, as it were. Thank you.
Mr. Webster.
Madam Mayor, given that we're in workshop format, I just wanted to provide an observation from my office. I find that with this initiative, when we got into it, and we retained some very good consultants and did a lot of consultation, but it certainly changed the nature of this passive area we have here. And that's one of the comments I've heard from elected officials, is that the open space that's currently here is pretty affordable, since we've already paid for it, and it can be used and transformed. And this particular concept seems to almost take every conceivable municipal facility and tries to place it on these lands. And I think that part of the discussion that we'd like to have with council is, and maybe get some direction, is, are there certain aspects of this that could be taken to other sites that we also own? And I would cite other community centers that are currently in our ownership. Our operations center, currently behind the sports complex, is hopefully going to be vacated in short order, and providing some other acreage for potential public use. And as well, we have the Queensville Healthy Active Living Plaza site that also has some very impressive areas for some of these facilities. So one of the directions that we would maybe take a look at is, are some of these numbers that I take it go from 1 to 8, could they go to other sites? And as far as phasing goes, if there was one element that council said that's a real good way to start, maybe like with one of these types of things, it might be an affordable way to incrementally start getting away at this. And I cite things like Riverwalk Commons. That didn't happen in a day. You know, the trail system and the lake, and then, you know, it expanded into the other uses. And maybe there might be an idea of, if there was a priority idea and some direction for other facilities and how they may fit as well. So that's just some observations.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of comments. I'm very glad to see that refurbished silo is in here. I know that past councils voted to save it. It was a bit of a hot button topic, if I remember right. I've spoken to a lot of residents, and it comes up quite often. So let's put a roof on it and cut a window in it and serve water out of it or something. Let's do something with it. So it's good to see that that's in phase 1. A couple of other comments, and I might be getting way ahead of myself here, but I'm looking at page 25, and it says relocation of the cenotaph. I think I'd like to see lots of information on that one, and I don't know what you're going to have to do to get me on side with that one. The thing was placed, and I think it should stay where it is. The other thing that I kind of wanted to question, and maybe you could comment on it, stacked parking. I'm having a hard time thinking about a largely recreational facility with stacked parking. I'm not thinking that it kind of holds the theme that we're looking for, and I can't think of any that are like that. Am I wrong? I just wondered if you could speak to that. Thank you.
Certainly, through you, Madam Mayor. First, on the cenotaph, the consultant's original report did identify that as a proposal to relocate the cenotaph. That's not staff's position at this point. We're suggesting it stay in its current location, but we eliminate the turnaround and just do a new paving scheme and more of a gathering, make that more of a focal point out front. With respect to the structured stack parking, I mean, that was again, part of the proposal, I think 410 spaces underground. It was a combination, I think, at that point, underground and perhaps parking deck, but there's a huge cost to that. And again, that's not something that we're suggesting we move forward with.
Councillor Morton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have to echo Councillor Foster's comments with regards to the cenotaph. I know many veterans and non-veterans, but veterans' families that supported a lot and donated a lot of money to that. So I would hate to see it moved somewhere else as well. Making it a gathering area might help at Remembrance Day, because it would be, you wouldn't be standing on the wet grass and everything else. And so that's my comment on the cenotaph anyways. The heritage lighting that Frank mentioned, I think that's a great idea, because I understand that I think Councillor Roy DeClemente is very supportive of the downtown core, the being heritage. And I'm hoping that the lighting perhaps all the way down the rest of the road might be heritage as well. Now, I guess that would involve the region deciding on things like that, but it certainly would make it a heritage area and a heritage-looking area as we go forward on that. And I know that there's a special name, and I'm not sure whether it's, I'm probably going to get this wrong, permeable stone that can be used. Is that what you're considering if you're going to be doing stone in this area? Or has that come up?
Through you, Madam Mayor, certainly could be one consideration is when doing hardscaping, you could use permeable pavers to help with stormwater management as well as rainwater harvesting. So it does present an opportunity when you're introducing hardscaping adjacent to softscaping, is to have permeable pavement or permeable pavement feeding those shrubs, those trees, the softscaping that is also installed. So absolutely, there is an opportunity to implement low impact development or permeable pavers that could be included with any hardscaping implementation.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just, Mr. Webster asked us a question, and I thought I might help by answering his question, at least from my perspective. I think the concept plan incorporates a lot. For me, I think it reflects the image that we want to portray of the Civic Center, our town, and our community. And this is, the pride of place, the quality of place. And I think what it does is it enhances the features that we're already, things that we're already doing on site, but it provides us with a better place to do so. So we have concerts here. This provides us with a better way of having concerts here. We used to have the farmers market here. It would be great if we could have it back here in a better facility that's suited for it. And so I think the way that, the passive recreation, the people are going from point A to point B, they're crossing the site to get to Leslie to shop, this just creates a more appropriate and more attractive way for us to do that. I think the only thing that stands out for me would be the skating piece of it. And the challenge is that I think for as long as I've been on council, people have been asking for a facility to do outdoor skating. And so whether it's here or whether it's something that we say it's definite, we have to give it a place and we have to tell people where it's going to be and when we're going to have it. Whether it's, I know we've talked about doing it in Mount Albert, and that's part of the plans. But if we're going to do it at the sports complex, and it's going to be on the septic bed or where the ops and the operations facility is now, then we need to say that. Or if we keep it here, that's fine too. Because again, this is like for me, that's the only thing that stands out that we would move. Otherwise, I think we want all of these things. Thank you.
Well said. We want all of these things. We want them. I think this speaks to a lot of people talking about where are you going to have your downtown area. And for us, we're one of the few communities that doesn't have a major downtown area. When you take a look at Stouffville, or you take a look at King and Schaumburg, and you take a look at Newmarket or Aurora, they have a downtown area they can start with. And I think for us, this is a vision of building our downtown area. And unlike the other municipalities, it's been given to them over the years. We're in a position that we can make this very special based on, I'm not going to say a clean slate, but certainly a slate that we can work with and provide the amenities that the other municipalities have been able to do. As they've grown, they've been able to have an area that they can have culture as well as activities and also some green space and a place for people to meet and commercial. And our commercial looks like it's going to be looked after for us. The covered facility for skating, I have mixed feelings about it. I've seen it in other municipalities. It's very, very busy. Depending on the architecture of it, it can be used for a lot of different things in the summertime, including events. And I think that's going to be really important to have something like that as our population continues to grow. Yeah. We've talked about many times about a water feature, and so the water feature, part of that thought, I think, from members of council was a water feature was outdoor skating. So this will provide the activity, but it won't provide the ambiance of an outdoor water space. And I'm not seeing a fountain or something in there at this point. However, I think there's enough latitude that at some point we may see something like that. I'm not sure about how functional a fountain is unless kids can actually use it for a wading pool or a splash pad, but I think there's opportunities for that as well. We do have neighbors, and they will be our partners. Vince is spending a lot of money in East Gwillimbury to provide a beautiful facility. And while he's spending the money, he is our neighbor, and it is going to provide an anchor for us in this as well. And I think that in seeing some of the finished sketches that he envisions his facility to look like, it will be certainly a pairing and partnership with what we want to do here. Phase one, I think, Mr. Webster, it was you that asked what do we want first? And I think we're missing two members of council today who both had previous commitments. But I think every one of us, 7 people here, probably have a different idea of what we want to see first. So that's going to be the getting together, and perhaps Councillor Morton's idea of doing some boots on the ground to have a look-see and flush some of those out. We've had a lot of good consultation from community and a little less consultation from the members up here. So I look forward to that taking place. The lighting that we had talked about, heritage lighting, I'm also conscious about low impact lighting as well. And I'm sure that that's going to be incorporated into it, but I thought it should be said because more and more the lighting does have an effect on our environment. And if we can make sure that when we're talking about lighting and heritage, we can talk about that as well. I think that's an important message for people to have. And the last one is the silo. And Councillor Foster has already spoken about it. Our roots are rural in East Gwillimbury, and if this is going to be a focal point gathering for our community, people need to remember that we started out as a rural community, agricultural. I suspect that there are hundreds of silos throughout York region that were functioning as grain storage that have all disappeared. Most of them have disappeared over time, and I think we can be unique and we can celebrate it and make sure that people understand that on this property where we are here now, though it was a little lower and wet here, but certainly behind us where our house is and up to the corner, that it was very, it was a functional farm, that people planted crops and lived off the land. So I've always been one that, I know some people think it's a waste of money, and I'm very pleased to see that you've found some silos that are gate entry features or identifying opportunities for our community itself. I'm sure there's a lot more out there if we maybe put it out to people that if you're out traveling, this traveling time is coming, that get some pictures of silos that have been turned into something else. I think that's all I have right now. I too would like to see a little more green around this area for now, and perhaps we don't have to have it all planned all at once. Perhaps it's an area that's green and benches and passive area that in time something may speak to us or people that follow us in these positions, that there's a need at that point. So I'm not as keen on building everything out all at once or planning it all at once. The green space, I think, would enhance the rest of the facility as well. So with that, I guess, are there any other comments at this point? I really want to thank staff for the vision that they have had. They very difficult to come up with something on paper when you're talking to hundreds of people in the community who all have different ideas, and I very much appreciate how you've been able to put that together for us today. So with that, I would ask, yes, go ahead, sorry, Mr. Clerk.
So through you, Madam Mayor, to certainly council and senior management here, I heard through the presentation that there's some possible options for direction to staff and coming back with a work plan or financial plan. I'm not sure that the resolution proposed to just be received is what staff is looking for, so I just put that out there.
I hesitate to, thank you very much. I hesitate with the absence of two members of council. It's substantial that we go much beyond this unless I'm hoping that there's another opportunity in the very near future. I suspect that people will be watching this on the podcast, and that there may be a lot of comments that come back now that we're starting to drill down to something that is very concrete, and people can certainly see the ideas that are here. Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to suggest that given we have two members of council that are not here and that there isn't really a prepared resolution for us, what I might suggest is that we direct staff to maybe do a little bit of PR on the rescoped, because the last time we talked about this, it was a grand plan, and now this is something that is a bit more manageable and a bit more appropriate for our current times. So, hey folks, this is where we're at now. What do you think? So do a little bit of outreach from some of the stakeholders that we touched through the process, and direct staff to bring it back to us as part of a report to a CWC, so that the other members of committee, council can engage with that material, and then we can move forward. I think we have time, since we're looking at a capital budget. That's 2020. There's some time there for us to get this right. That would be my suggestion.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much. So with that, have you written something or no? No, I just didn't. I didn't know. Thank you. Council directs staff to conduct public outreach on the rescope and report back to a future committee meeting of the whole. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Roy DiClemente, and seconded by Councillor Morton. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, staff. I know a lot of work has gone into that, and hopefully we're now starting to move a little closer to something we can feel. Thank you. Our next topic today is our strategic plan presentation. And I was very pleased to see how far it's come along in a short period of time. So with that, I would ask Mr. Webster if you could introduce this, please.
Certainly, Madam Mayor. The strategic plan is a document that gives focus to the four-year council term. And just as a reminder, our town council first adopted a plan over a decade ago in 2005 and has regularly updated it early in each term of council. And what the intention of a plan is that quite often to get into a good direction, one needs a plan, be it a corporation or an individual. And this plan would be intended to guide the four-year term. We would propose to do annual report cards for the public so that they could too monitor the progress of the various initiatives. And we did put our own fingerprint on this plan. Instead of retaining a consultant, we have a staff team, a multi-departmental staff team that's been developed and has headed this up since our orientation sessions in December, after council was first sworn in. And I'll let that team take over now, and I believe that Kevin Brake, who's our manager of development engineering, will be our first presenter. And I think, Kevin, there's going to be a couple other folks as well, and opportunity for some discussion and engagement as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Through you, Madam Mayor, good morning, Madam Mayor, members of council. Myself, Laura Hanna, Director of Communications, as well as Amy Artinian, Employee Engagement Coordinator, are happy to be here today to facilitate the third strategic plan workshop. So kicking things off, again, consistent with previous workshops, we thought it'd be good to go through a high-level overview of where we've been and also touch on where we're going today. So as you'll recall, back in December of 2018, we held our strategic plan orientation session as part of the council orientation. Gave us an opportunity to review themes and ideas, and catching you fresh off the campaign trail, talk about items you had discussed with members of the public. Following the council orientation, we had our council one-on-one sessions in January of this year. Again, an opportunity to sit down with each of you individually and review your thoughts and ideas in more detail. In conjunction with those meetings, we also had our staff and resident surveys outreach, which garnered a lot of great feedback from the community, which has been incorporated into the plan. In February of this year, we had our first workshop with council, where we received an endorsement of the structure and concept of the plan, and we're asked to report back with some draft text, a draft text version of the document. This workshop occurred in April of this year, where council endorsed the strategic purpose, vision, and values, as well as the strategic priorities and strategic actions. This brings us to today, where we will review the draft design, as well as the website design, and also touch on our resident communication strategy and staff communication strategy. I'll now pass things over to Laura to review the draft design concept.
Thank you. So as Kevin mentioned, at our last workshop, council had directed staff to develop a design concept for the strategic plan. So through our workshops and our one-on-ones, we did have a variety of feedback from each of you that we took into consideration when developing this brand. First and foremost, what we heard was that the current town branding wasn't necessarily a throwaway, it was a good start. So what you will see in all of the design that we are presenting today is a look and a connection back to what we've previously used as branding, but an update to a bit of a refresh as well. We also heard feedback that it should be focused on a digital design, so I'll be walking you through that in a moment. and very graphic rather than text heavy. So what you'll see in the hard copy as well as on the digital presence is a bit more white space opened up with graphics, and we'll walk through that shortly. We've also developed the strategic priorities into a recognizable graphic that will be incorporated into all of the branding and the communication strategies of the plan, which Amy will go over in just a moment and is shown here on the sign. So to start with, I'll walk you through the website. Great, thank you. So this page has been made live for presentation purposes, but will be removed until the whole thing is developed and ready and endorsed by council. So what I wanted to walk you through at this point was a little bit of the changes that we've developed since the last strategic plan. So some of the feedback that we heard with the last strategic plan was that we had embedded the PDF and the hard document almost mirror image of one another. So it was a hard copy morphed into a design. So what we've actually done instead of that is taken the design elements out of the hard copy and developed a website on its own. So you'll see things like a new header developed, which is consistent with the design standards. And if we can just scroll, we've incorporated the message from Mayor and Council. And also throughout the content, where applicable, we've added interactive links so people can find additional information. Go a little bit further. And so here we have the 4 priorities listed out. Some residents may prefer to see the hard copy, so we have provided the opportunity to download the PDF here, which is a copy of the hard version. And then each of these will be an interactive link where the residents can click on that priority to learn more about it. We'll come back to that in just a second. We'll just scroll down a bit further. We've also included some of the items from the hard copy, so the core purpose, vision, and values, as well as how we'll be reporting on the strategic plan as we move forward. If we could just scroll back up. We're going to click today on the responsible growth and environmental protection priority, which we've developed out. So each priority will have its own page listed with the priority and the actions. And something that we've introduced new this year is a bit of a dynamic piece to the website. So as we move through this term of council, what we're looking to do is work with staff to update each of these priorities with the projects and the plans that are directly aligning with each of those priorities. So it's really a lively, resident-friendly document, so you can see how it incorporates into all of our projects. That's great. Perfect, thank you. So I'd also like to take you through a brief walkthrough of the hard copy. We've provided each of you with one today, and SMT, I believe you have that on the agenda copy as well. So just as you see here, it will be, once finalized, printed into a booklet format. And one of the things that we wanted to bring to your attention today was that through one of our council workshops, we discussed how each of these priorities there wasn't a hierarchy to them. So there wasn't one that went above the other, that they all worked together to create the full priority list. So we've actually taken that concept and developed it into the puzzle piece branding that you'll see throughout and in here. And that's something that Amy's going to discuss a little bit more shortly. We've also incorporated feedback from the public because that was an extensive part of this process. So on page 5, you'll see comments pulled out as well as on the inside cover. Overall, we've used a lot of bright colors, tried to use an open concept. So even on the priority pages, there isn't a lot of extra. So really, you're drawn right into reading the strategic priority and right into the actions that council set forward. We would definitely love to hear any of your feedback and discuss this more in depth. But first, I'm just going to pass it to Amy to discuss the communications plan.
Great. Thank you, Laura, for taking us through the review of the design concept and website. So now I'll be taking you through the resident and staff communications strategy we have developed for the plan. I'll start by mentioning that the 2 communications strategies are ultimately intertwined with one another. By educating staff on the strategic plan, they can now be ambassadors, effectively communicating with residents on their own projects that directly relate back to the strategic priorities laid out by council. As you have seen through Laura's review of the design concept, we have developed the recognizable puzzle design and graphic that we can incorporate into all levels of communication with residents and staff. We see these puzzle pieces as synonymous icons of the plan. Playing off of this concept, we are recommending that we incorporate the puzzle pieces with projects that are taking place across the town that directly connect back to the strategic priorities. For example, the new spin studio at the EG Sports Complex has 5 spin bikes, free for use for residents and staff. We would, and they're ultimately there to encourage a fit and healthy active lifestyle. So this example is representative of the new quality programs and services strategic priority. So we could place a puzzle piece by the spin studio to indicate to residents that the strategic alignment of this initiative connects back to our strategic plan. The signage could incorporate a QR code or link back to the strategic plan website to create that full circle back to the plan and to help achieve and show the community that we're achieving the initiatives throughout our community. We are also looking at incorporating a fun interactive puzzle and exhibit at the Civic Center, which could draw visitors in and to interact and learn about our strategic plan. So at this point, we have discussed the enhanced website presence and have seen some of the components with Laura. One of the new concepts that I wanted to bring mention to is that on the website we talked a bit about the real-time community reporting on projects that are happening in our at the town. And so this is something that's a little bit unique, and it will be something that's actively updated as we go forward. Some of the other concepts of the resident communication strategy would include an interactive social media campaign, as well as a short educational video on the plan. We also would ensure that the traditional forms of communication are maintained, so such as posters and hard copies would be available at our town facilities. With the staff communication strategy, we would look to introduce staff to the new 2019 to 2022 strategic plan at a town hall meeting. Interactive department meetings would also be held, which would focus on further details of the plan, showcasing how it could be incorporated and connected to current and future projects. These meetings would be the ideal time to introduce staff to the new puzzle branding and to show how it would be incorporated into our corporate communication, such as through presentations, staff reports, town documents, media releases, and community projects such as the Spin Studio. The real-time and annual reports developed on the strategic plan will also allow staff to monitor their progress in developing new projects and initiatives that achieve the strategic direction set out by Council. It's also fair to say that as we progress forward through the life of this document, new communication opportunities may become available, and we would look to incorporate those with these strategies. Our next slide outlines our resolution, where we are seeking Council to receive the strategic plan presentation, approve the design of the strategic plan, and that Council directs staff to launch the resident and staff communication strategies for the strategic plan. So if there are any questions or comments, we're happy to answer them now.
Thank you very much. Questions from members of council? Comments from members of council? Go ahead.
I just slam dunk for me. Thank you. I know that we tweaked it a few times, but I'm really excited about the puzzle pieces and the dynamic way that we're going to be integrating it into our operations. As I said, a slam dunk for me. Thank you.
I just like the feel of it, the look of it. It's fresh, it's new. The graphics are they make it. Whether it's indoor, outdoor, excuse me, whether it's the temple or the town office or a streetscape, it's very well done. And those municipalities that say they need to have somebody from outside as a consultant, we've got better people inside. I'm very proud of it. It looks wonderful. Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to reiterate the kudos. Well done. I've been through a number of strategic plans corporately, and I have to tell you, given the choice, I would rather do dental surgery than sit through some of those plans. Yeah. This was very pleasurable. So thank you, and congratulations for all your hard work. I loved the use of white space, the branding. Well done.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, we just wanted to shout out to Danielle. The design and concept of the design of the strategic plan was all done in-house.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Anybody else? With that, could I have a motion to receive? And our motion is that council approve the design of the strategic plan and that council direct staff to launch the resident and staff communication strategies for the strategic plan. Moved by Councillor Crone, seconded by Councillor Roy DiClemente. Any questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, staff. Very much appreciate the hard work you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you. And item number 3 on our agenda this morning is the Sharon Temple verbal presentation. I kind of think it's good that you're third on the agenda because all of these items, this one and the first one, are very important to how you operate and how we operate together. So I think it was, I don't know if it was planned that way intentionally, but I think it was a very good strategic plan to have you here while we're doing 2 other very important items on through the community.
Morning,
Welcome.
Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, senior staff. It's a great honor for me to be here to make this presentation this morning. Unfortunately, there was to be 3 of us, and the person who was to go first, her father is quite seriously ill and couldn't be here. So I'll cover the first part, and then I'll move to let Ian do his part, and I'll finish up. The first part of the presentation was simply that the Children of Peace did not build a history, but much of that history is created because of their values. Working together for the common good, helping one another so that together they all prospered, square dealing, equality among the sexes, to name but a few of their characteristics. We've worked very hard at the Temple to try and follow those values. And I'll leave it now to Ian to inform you how we are carrying those values forward.
So as Jim mentioned, the Children of Peace played a significant and important role in the development of our country and, of course, in our community. They were the builders of Sharon. They were also participants and builders of democracy. The temple itself is not only an architectural marvel, it remains as one of Canada's last remaining architectural sites of democracy and a symbol of the values that are symbolic of a healthy democracy. We, the board, have decided to continue that historic relationship with our democracy project. Now, if you've been watching the playoffs in NHL, you may have noticed the Molson commercial that states, "The best way to honor history is to keep making history." And we've decided that's what we should do. The Democracy Project has identified 5 important aspects of democracy that is truly reflective of the Children of Peace. Those are citizenship and civic engagement, poverty, peace, education, and inclusion. We will seek out partnerships that can add value to our goals and are currently working on creating partnerships with the United Way to address poverty, and with YMCA to enhance our peace ceremony. An offshoot of the YMCA partnership could be Rep Your Region, conversations that we've had with them where the Sharon Temple and the grounds would be host to a Northern Six competition. Music was an important aspect of the Children of Peace, and some people have referred to the temple as being acoustically perfect. All of our initiatives will have music as an underlying foundation. To help our committee achieve the goals we have outlined in a meaningful and lasting way, we have begun recruiting advisors to the project. I am pleased to say that to date we have recruited Bill Hogarth, the former head of the Public School Board, to work with us on education, Neela Pacente, the former president of South Lake Regional Health Center Foundation, and Glenn Murray, a Juno-nominated musician, an activist, and a member of ArtsCan, which works with Indigenous people. There's not enough time today, perhaps there is, to fully explore all 5 of our goals. It usually takes about 45 minutes to an hour. I'm going to focus on a few of the things that have been accomplished so far. Now remember, this project only started late last year. Citizenship was one of our first objectives, believing that a citizenship ceremony in the Sharon Temple would be a remarkable opportunity for new citizens to receive their citizenship in a building so connected to Canada's values and its history. We are pleased to announce that on August 14th, a citizenship ceremony will take place at the Sharon Temple. We believe this will be the first citizenship ceremony held in East Gwillimbury. It will also be a partnership with the Institute for Canadian Citizenship. The ICC is a national charity co-founded and co-chaired by the Right Honourable Adrienne Clarkson and John Roston Saul. And we're excited to be in that partnership with them. One of the aspects of the Sharon Temple's history that we want to shine a greater light on is the temple's link with Quebec. And it's a very important one, as it helped guide Upper and Lower Canada to responsible government. The development of this relationship fits perfectly into the temple's democracy project. After the rebellion of 1837, which took place in both what is today Ontario and Quebec, 2 men emerged as key political leaders. They were Robert Baldwin and Louis Hippolyte Fontaine. In 1841, prior to the first election for the United Canada Parliament, Robert Baldwin invited LaFontaine to stand as the candidate in one of the 4 ridings of York, the riding that we are in. Louis LaFontaine was a Francophone, and for a Francophone to be elected in an Anglophone community is remarkable, especially at that time. And it took the Children of Peace to help make that possible. In fact, David Wilson was campaign manager, and the civilian band for the Children of Peace were evident and participated at candidate ridings. The lectern that is in the Sharon Temple was used by William Lyon Mackenzie, Robert Baldwin, and Louis LaFontaine when they spoke at the temple. And I do get a kick out of standing there and putting my hands on it and thinking who was there before me. Later on, LaFontaine returned the favor, and Robert Baldwin was elected in 1843 in a riding near Rimouski in Quebec. They developed a strong friendship which lasted throughout their lives. While sadly neither lived to see Confederation, their work in championing and then implementing responsible government stands as a landmark in Canadian history to the establishment of a country based on solid democratic ideals and institutions. The Municipal Act and our legal system are all outcomes of that responsible government. The 1867 Canadian Confederation would not have happened when it did without Louis LaFontaine and Robert Baldwin. Both men represented this riding. To honor this partnership, the Sharon Temple has reached out to 2 Quebec museums which share a link with LaFontaine. One is the Maison Nationale du Patriote, which is located in the town of Saint-Denis-sur-Richelieu, an hour's drive southeast of Montreal. The other museum is the first home of LaFontaine, Maison Louis Hippolyte LaFontaine, and it is located in the town of Boucherville across the St. Lawrence River from the eastern end of Montreal. Charles Beer, who's a member of our committee, has made several visits to Quebec to begin the conversations of this partnership, along with his brother, who lives in Montreal. We can tell you that in initial discussions have centered on exchanging artifacts, informational panels, which could be on display at each museum, and we are looking at 2020 as the time to carry this out. It is our hope, and it is their interest, that this will end into a twinning of a museum in Quebec and a museum here in East Gwillimbury. The Sharon Temple is already actively involved with other GTA and Southern Ontario museums to launch a project commemorating the 1837 rebellion and what followed. This is our Road to Rebellion project. We look forward to inviting all of you to get your muskets and pitchforks and join in with us. This project is slowly beginning to take shape, and it is a big project for us. We hope through museum partnerships to have 300 artifacts, be involved with up to 17 institutions, and possibly 3 countries. It is possible that other activities may be included, but as I said, we're still very much in the early days. We believe that through these partnerships and the development of a knowledgeable and influential advisory team, the Sharon Temple Museum Society can play an important role in building community, just as the Children of Peace did in building hope. Sharon. Our long-term goal is to bring that history and those values onto the national stage. We look forward to working with the town of East Gwillimbury in developing that future. Now to speak more to the future, Jim.
Thank you, Ian. Ian has just told you how we at the Sharon Temple National Historic Site are interpreting the values into our democracy project. So how, in practical terms, are we hoping to implement those values into the history of East Gwillimbury? But first, how do we get to where we are? How did we get to where we are today? From 1832 until the Children of Peace ceased to exist in 1889, the temple was used as a place of worship. In 1917, in the middle of the war to end all wars, the York Pioneers Historical Society somehow found the $1,500 required to purchase from Michael Ramsey this dilapidated building and 5 acres of land. Over the next year, they restored the building. It was one of the first major restorations of its size in Canada. They assembled the artifacts, and in September of 1918, opened the first county museum in Ontario. This is how I first saw it in the 1940s, full of the wonderful objects from the past. The radio car that ran from Toronto to Jackson's Point brought thousands of people to see the museum and enjoy the site. Try and keep up, eh? However, through the years, other municipalities opened their own museum to celebrate their own history, and a county museum was not as important as it once had been. Attendance and support to the site gradually declined. In 1990, the York Pioneers sold the property to a not-for-profit corporation known as the Sharon Temple Museum Society. The site then became the Museum of the Children of Peace, to tell the story of these people and the remarkable part they played in shaping this country, which Ian so aptly explained. This country, known as Canada, the country that we all love today. At the Temple, we're often short of money, but we're never short on vision. And as such, we're looking at the next step as a museum, and that is the Museum of Democracy and History of East Gwillimbury. The Children of Peace were large in East Gwillimbury, but they were not the only ones that left their footprints in the history of this municipality. There were many people besides David Wilson and Ebenezer Doan who've played important roles in the life of East Gwillimbury and beyond its borders. Samuel and Rufus Burchard, two Quakers from Vermont who founded the little community of Burchardville, later to become Mount Albert. They built a grist mill, a flour mill, a woolen mill, a lumber mill, and by the 1830s, Mount Albert was already a thriving community. And of course, Samuel Lount, born in 1791, a blacksmith from Holland Landing, and a member of the Legislative Assembly, who paid the ultimate price for his fight to bring reform to Canada. On April the 12th, 1838, he was hung for his part in the rebellion. John Thomas Stokes, an architect, an engineer, built many notable buildings in Upper Canada. He built the Presbyterian Church in Newmarket. He built Sir William Mulock's home, recently acquired by the town of Newmarket. He built the little Anglican church in Sharon, which sits right across the road from the home that he built for himself. As a hobbyist, he was a watercolor painter and a woodworker. But he had one other great accomplishment. He and his wife Martha had 7 daughters, one of which was my great-grandmother. None of these people were members of the Children of Peace. And let's not forget the number of men and women who served in many wars, including, which you may not know, the American Civil War. 2 of the 3 men from this area that served in the American Civil War are buried in the Sharon burying grounds. Sadly, the 3rd one never came home. An East Gwillimbury Museum will preserve this history in perpetuity so that the residents of the future may know and appreciate the past. I am proud to be part of the little museum that could, and we invite the town to join us in a vision for the future as we celebrate the road to democracy that began here in the township of East Gwillimbury and is entrenched forever in our history. Madam Mayor and everyone, I thank you for your kind attention. If there are any questions for Ian and myself, we'll be pleased to try and answer them.
Thank you very much. There isn't a time that you're at that microphone that we don't learn a lot about our community. And of all the people in this room, I'm sure that you've been here the longest. Thank you very much. We're richer for your speeches.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? Councillor Morton.
Not a question, just a comment. I've been through the temple many times and have brought my grandchildren through them, and they're quite enthralled with it when they see some of the pictures that are revolving. And I'm a history freak, so I am pleased to see what you're doing over there. And I know that we are trying to get a 200th anniversary working for Mount Albert in 2021. So that will be my big respect, I guess, for all of the people that started Mount Albert as well. So I understand that what you're fighting for over here too, and I'm very, very proud to see the Sharon Temple moving ahead. And we were talking about the silo, and I very quickly said to the mayor that perhaps we should have some public art beside that silo, and the picture of all the cows beside the Sharon Temple, I think it would be a great combination for both us as neighbors. So maybe we'll have someone design a cow for us and have it wandering out in the back 40 someplace.
Just remember, you have to feed them, Kathy.
And not if they're not real hungry.
Any comments, questions? Anyone else? Councillor Crone?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to our presenters. Thank you very much. I enjoyed the presentation. Always informative and enlightening. I'm really excited about the Democracy Project. Speaking as a descendant of someone who actually fought in the rebellion of 1837, this means a lot to me personally. So you have my pledge. If there's anything I can do to help and assist, I'm happy to do so. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions. We are well looked after and are continually updated on what is happening at the temple by your council liaison, Councillor Roy DiClemente. She does a terrific job in keeping us posted on what's going on. So between you and our council liaison, I like to think that our council is very much up to speed. With that, we will have I have a resolution at this time, and I know that we will be having further discussions about a variety of topics that you've covered during your presentation here today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Roy DiClemente, will you move the resolution? Thank you. Councillor Crone, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. And I must say, thank you for last evening. It was a lovely evening at the Sharon Temple, and once again, we are always very honored to be there and to experience a performance like we had last night in the temple. It certainly shows it is perfect pitch there.
We're very pleased to have you and the members of council that did attend. I had a great deal to do with last night. Actually, nothing. Lori is responsible for it.
Thank you very much. I know you work as a team, as we do, and it was a wonderful evening and well put together, so thank you very much. Okay, I do not have anything under other business. Mr. Webster, do we have anything under other business at this time?
The only thing, Madam Mayor, would be an advisement for public record. The province continues to have a number of legislative proposed changes coming in quickly, and staff are monitoring them. The deadline for reporting on a lot of them is June 1st. And we are going to get our agenda out for next week on time on Wednesday, but I would ask for council's consideration that we may have an addendum package forwarded on Friday, hopefully, that will outline some potential town positions on the various different legislation changes, everything from the OMB LPAT to planning rules to development charges legislation. There's a whole array of proposed amendments that the staff team is reviewing. So we'll just provide an advisement on that.
Thank you very much. Okay. Could I have a mover and a seconder for our confirming bylaw, please? Councillor Foster, Councillor Roy DiClemente, all those in favor? That's carried, and we will adjourn this meeting at 11:43, moved by Councillor Morton, seconded by Councillor Crone. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, staff. Thank you, audience, for being here today.